Go. Hi. I'm going to start today's show a little differently. We're going to pretend like we're on the air when we're not. And I'm assuming people can hear me because I have messages for the guys in the control room, and I'll just work them in before the announcements. Hi, I'm Matt Dillahunty. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is Sunday, like October 25th or something. Tracie Harris is with me. I'm sure we'll get to the point where we actually do a show at some point. But for the guys in the booth, not only could we not hear anything out of the speaker, I can't hear anything when I push buttons, and no lights are coming on my telephone box. So we might have a problem taking calls today, and somebody might want to look into that. So how's there? That not only that box, but this doesn't work. So I'm sure they'll get on that and fix it. It's great because last week we only had 30 minutes to set up, and almost everything worked except we lost audio for part of the show, and we, thanks to people for letting us know. There's nothing we can do about that. This week we had an hour to get ready, and because of a traffic accident that slowed us down, etc. Some things didn't quite work out the way they're supposed to, so we're rapidly trying to fix stuff and do the best show we possibly can. I'm telling you, this is no surprise. For those of you who know, we've been doing the show from my place over the summer for the last 3 months or so. Dillahunty International Studios, a palatial, quasi-residential studio where we do the nonprofits program, which is also sponsored by the Atheist Community of Boston as is this program. Now we're back in the studio. They've done lots of upgrades. We've got improvements to our HD cameras, lots of improvements in the studio. I mean, it looks great, and there's lots of cool stuff we can do. We're going to probably modify some CG stuff. None of that I care about because it's more about substance than the layering that we put on top of it. And the show is caller driven. This is normally a live call-in television program sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin. We'll have the number for you shortly as soon as we're sure that the phone box is actually working. And you'll be able to call in and talk to us, perhaps explain what you believe and why, have a conversation or debate about all sorts of things. It could be related to religion or philosophy or science or whatever. Just, we're trying to promote as much conversation as we can. It's absolutely hilarious. If you can see the cable that they just dragged underneath the camera to get out the door with it, it's awesome. So we thought it was Gorilla TV when we were doing it from my couch. It wasn't. It was actually smooth as silk, and it's Gorilla TV now. So how you doing, Tracie?
Okay.
I have no idea if they can even switch the camera to see you or not.
I don't know.
Because we're kind of making this up. So I'll hit the announcements real quick. As I mentioned, we're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Boston. You can find out more about the ACA at the website www.atheist-community.org. And there's a calendar of events there for all you people who are saying, hey, I'm going to be in Austin. Are you guys still doing happy hour at the Dog and Duck on Thursdays? Yes, we are. Every Thursday around 7 o'clock or so. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us at any of our events. You don't have to be a member. It's open to the public. If you're coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, punch, pick on, pester, perturb, whatever, you can just call in once we get the phones up and running. And you might want to go to the close shot so Frank can sneak in undetected and give me back the phone box. Thanks. So, or now he's actually just crawling underneath. This is going to be like a play-by-play. And Frank's down on all fours, crawling underneath the cameras right now.
Yeah, get a picture of this.
Nobody can hear me because my mic's dead.
Is my mic dead?
And now it says, hello, you streamers, this is the post-show.
Mine's working. You want to borrow it?
Sure.
Okay.
So, yeah, evidently. There we go. All right. And it's backwards. And now it's probably making all kinds of noise, and the audio files are all ticked off. So, now you can probably hear me. And everything I said was serious, important, and correct. There was no funny business going on, and certainly no anxiety over the clustercluck that is the studio at the moment. We're having as much fun as we possibly can, and we're trying to get things corrected. For the people who are watching on the stream, I don't think that's going to go any further. I'd hate to chop it. For the people who are watching on the stream, you might be the only ones getting a really good show. I don't know what's going on in Austin because we don't get to see what's going on outside. In addition to this program, the ACI also sponsors the bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. For more information, go to nonprofitsradio.com. That's PROPHETS. It's currently on a forced hiatus. I know. I'm working 6 days a week, and so for the next 4 Saturdays, there cannot be a nonprofits. But we'll try and make up for it however I can. After this show's over, everybody involved gets together, and we're going to dinner at Threadgill's on Riverside. They'll have the address up in a little while. This show's on until 6 o'clock, and we normally get down to Threadgill's around 6:30. And you're welcome to come down and join us for drinks, dinner, and conversation. Upcoming events, you can, as I mentioned before, although you couldn't hear me, you can stop by the ACA website for more information about upcoming events, including what's on the calendar. And the Texas Free Thought Convention is going to be taking place November 14th, 15th. I think it's the 14th. In San Antonio, we've got information up there, or you can go to texasfreethoughtconvention.com, or maybe it's .org. Hell, I don't know. I don't even have my paperwork in front of me. This Thursday, Vic Stinger, look, there's all the people. Those are the people who are trying to fix this right now. And put their name up more often, because, I mean, you guys are doing the work to try and correct this. And I've got, look, I'm in jail. So Vic Stinger will be here this Thursday, and I don't know, but it's funny. And I don't have the information on that. Obviously, we're just making stuff up as we go along. I do have, and hopefully this gets out on the air audio, because it's something that I'd like to do as often as possible. Somebody emailed us, and actually Tracie answered first, about a counter-apologetic, I suppose, about the Apostle Paul advocating lying. The passage in question comes from Romans 3:7. Now, I've known for quite a while that this is a misunderstanding, and that if you read it in context, and actually this is where the NIV does a pretty good job of correcting it and giving you the perspective on the rhetorical device he's actually using. But verse 8 goes on to clarify it, and Paul's actually saying the opposite. He's basically saying, the people who would say you can do evil in order to accomplish good, their condemnation is justified. This isn't, so he wasn't advocating lying. However, I have for years been under the evidently false impression that Eusebius advocated lying on behalf of God. And after doing some more research, I think it was actually even included in my lecture on the biblical canon. And after doing a bunch more research in that area, it turns out that may not be accurate. That may have been him quoting from some of Plato's dialogues, and Gibbons and others have possibly read into that or misread it in much the same way that people have misread the passage in Romans. So it got me thinking, not only am I glad to find out that I'm wrong on this, although there are much better arguments on this front, than, hey, this church father advocated lying, and therefore it's all suspect. The forgery was going on. There was clearly deception. There was clearly disagreement. There was a lot of politicking going on in the formation of the early church. And there are good arguments to be made. But that one, as it turns out, would be a bad argument. And it's one that I've made, and I'm happy to be corrected, and happy to let other people, get the information that perhaps they have been wrong about this as well. And, feel free to look into it more and send more information if it turns out that we were originally right or wrong. I noticed that, I think it's Answers in Genesis has a web page that they put up specifically for apologists, and it's a list of arguments that they think creationists shouldn't use. Yeah, because they're really bad arguments. They're stupid arguments about stuff like moon dust that are just, a surface review of the scientific evidence shows that these particular claims are absurd. For the regular users of the Iron Chariots Wiki, if we don't already have this up, I think it's time that we create a page that is arguments that we think atheists should use, or arguments that we think shouldn't be used when arguing against Christianity or theism or something like that. Because there are. We did a whole show on who is atheist. Atheists doing silly things like suing over bumper stickers or everything under the sun. But there is no atheist doctrine. Church of Atheism. There is no pope. And that includes, Richard Dawkins or anybody else. It's just not the way it is. And the only unifying aspect of atheists is that we are all do not believe in a God, any God. Beyond that, we can have differing opinions and views on anything. And we can also be atheists for rational, intellectual, evidence-based reasons. Atheism as a result of the proper application of skepticism. Or there could be atheists, there are atheists who are atheists for really bad reasons. Perhaps they're irritated about religious people or religious influence or things that have gone wrong. For more emotional reasons, they were convinced by really bad arguments. And the last thing I'd ever want to do is convince somebody to give up their religious beliefs for bad reasons. That's no better than convincing someone to adopt religious beliefs for bad reasons. Both of those things they're reprehensible, intellectually defunct ways of going about things. I want people to believe whatever they believe for good reasons, for real reasons, evidence, reason, logic, not emotional. I'm not dismissing emotion. It's a powerful tool, and it's real. It's real to us. We experience things. And so playing on somebody's emotional views in order to get their attention is one thing, which is why we might talk about the immorality of slavery, etc. But it's a matter of making a rational argument and coming to conclusions for good, sound reasons. And I wouldn't, it bugs me when, for example, Sam Harris has used in his book this idea of I got flashing lights, which I have no idea if that means there's callers on those lines or if the thing's broken. But I got a note that says they're giving up on the call box and doing it from there, so I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to turn it over to Tracie in a minute, but there's one thing that came up this week. Some of us have been in contact, and some people have heard of this Coalition of Reason. That has, it's a group that's been working with atheist and secular, non-theistic organizations around the country to pull together community resources or to pull together the community, and they've been putting up billboards and subway signs and other things. Now there were of course the famous signs in the UK last year. There probably is no God, so stop worrying and get on with your life. Now there's been a number of Freedom from Religion Foundation have put up a number of a number of billboards. And there's new ones out there that basically say millions of Americans are good without God, are you? All of these billboards are basically calls out to other atheists. Don't believe in God, you're not alone. It's a way of letting people know that if you're one of us who feel like you're the only one of us, you're not. It's a way of reaching out to the people who are already there. It's not necessarily any kind of marching orders. If we had a billboard that said, it's time for you to, march into churches and drag people kicking and screaming from their religious delusions, okay, I could see maybe getting a little bent out of shape about something like that. But it's not like, there's anything like proselytizing. And yet, Sean Hannity, you just love him. He's a complete tool.
That in the opposite way, but it's not even a call to people to say rethink your position on God.
Yeah.
it's not even aimed at a believer. It's just aimed at somebody who already doesn't believe in God to let them know we'd like to network with you. We offer you community. And that alone is enough to get people in a snit.
Oh, yeah. They're irritating piss.
It just blows my mind that I can be inundated day and night with religious programming, religious cartoons, religious advertising, religious things, and telling me that I need to believe in God, I'm an idiot if I don't believe in God, just as cool as you want to be. And then the message that's put out by the atheists, not all of the atheist communities, but some of these communities, is just simply a call to other believers saying, hey, if you'd like to get together. And that is just like considered some kind of I've seen it called things like an attack, where people say they're attacking my religion. And it's like, how is that attacking your religion?
Just go ahead and talk. We've already screwed this all up. What's up?
Tracie, move your mic up.
She needs to move her mic up. We've almost got everything sorted. Quickly, before I'm going to need that in a second, if you could hand it to me. But that particular billboard, the "Don't believe in God, you are not alone," could be, as Thad pointed out to me after Nonprofits, interpreted in an entirely different way. This could be a message from believers to non-believers. As long as you said, hey, don't believe in God, and then the "you are not alone" is an implied there is a God. Right. You think, you don't believe in God? You're not alone.
Yeah.
That type of thing. But Sean Hannity went on the air the other day to complain about these things, and because they're on like subways and whatnot. Yeah. And what he said, and I'm going to paraphrase it rather than trying to play the video clip, was, can you imagine what kind of ruckus there would be if there were Christian pro-God messages on subways? Okay, Sean, what country are you living in? I mean, do you just like get limousined from your house to the studio in like total darkness? Have you never been to like Texas? If I drive from Austin to Dallas, there are billboards up that's like, meet me before the game, God, and hell is real, John 3:16. They're all over the place. And this is nothing new. And by the way, here's a message that used to be on buses from the Ad Council. I'll adjust it that way you don't have to mess with that. Light their life with faith. Bring them to worship this week. You guys started all this. It's a good idea. It's a good way to reach out to other people. Now, this though, isn't a way of reaching out necessarily to other people. This is a bit of propaganda put out by the Ad Council. Light their life with faith. It is a statement about what worldview is better and preferable, and encouraging people to take people to church. It's encouraging proselytizing. I'm wondering if it went away because maybe the Ad Council got some Jews on it who got tired of seeing all this Christian nonsense all over the religious ads, and some people actually warmed up to the idea that not everything, that this is a potentially divisive and offensive message. It's not just a call out to, hey, fellow Christians, we'd like to see you in church again. That's not this. But that is what the atheist billboards are. It's the, hey, you're not alone, and
it's
millions of people
can. As you can get. And it is. I've heard people refer to it as militant. I've heard it called an attack, and I'm like, how is this? This shouldn't even be threatening to a person. It doesn't even question anybody else's belief.
Yeah. And the last thing I have before I'll turn it over to Tracie is I need to, another thank you. There's a gentleman who contacted me on Facebook, wanted my address because he said he wanted to send me a gift. And while I'm not keen on the whole gift thing, I went ahead and did it. Hey, look, there's a fly in here now too. And what he sent me is this little booklet. It's called The Matchless Gift, Krishna Consciousness. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, or Pada, and comes with a nice peacock feather tucked into it. And I receive all kinds of things from people of different, I can't count the number of Bibles that are now stacked up at my house from people sending stuff I got one here every day. So yeah, I probably don't need another Bible. But this I actually did need because I am not particularly conversant with the Krishna consciousness movement or anything like that, and it would be an interesting read. So I've got some information I didn't have before, and I'll review it and look it over. And so thanks. And if If it changes my life, I'll thank you again. And if it just gives me ammo to point out another thing that I don't believe, then I'll still thank you, because it's more information.
Yeah.
So what have you got?
Well, what I said I want to talk about is salvation, and I would still like to hit on that if we can get to it, but I don't know if we will or not. One of the things that I did this week was I went camping in Canyon, and I've done that before, like in different canyons, and it was just interesting to me how you're driving through, and everybody I think is familiar with the idea of like the desert and the mesas and how they have these layers and layers of color. So you'll see these, there's hardly any plants, and what plants there are, they're very hardy kind of green plants. I mean, the desert can flower, but that's particular seasons, and so most of the color that you see is actually in the rocks that are red and purple and white, and I mean, there's just these layers upon layers of different rock layers. And it was really interesting because this particular canyon was Paladura up in the Panhandle area of Texas, and they have like educational and museum sections that you can go into, like buildings.
Right.
And one of the things they show are the breakdown of the layers and the years, like how many billion years was this laid down, and what kind of rock is this. And they also had a section on the animals that used to live there that have since become extinct. Some of them are modern extinctions, and some of them are, and I don't know if I should call it an extinction. It's like a localized extinction, I should say. Like these are animals that are alive in other areas that have died in the canyon. But there's also some animals that you would not find anymore on the planet that were, that they found fossil remains in the canyon. And what's interesting to me is that they have in this particular canyon several pretty heavy water crossings, where if you get a good rain, you will have trouble driving across. I mean, the water can get up to 5 feet high, and that's kind of where their measuring devices kind of peter out at like 5 feet. But when you go and you look down the rivers, like as you're doing the crossing, you can see that it has cut down deeper. Like there's smaller cuts where the river has gone down, and there's more layers along these minor grooves where the smaller rivers have cut, so that you have this visual that the river continues to cut into this rock even today, and that it continues to change. Like you'll see erosion, and they have rock slides where the dirt continues to erode due to rain. And just the idea that this, I guess the conversion of the land is a continuous thing. It's continually changing. It's not like, here it is, here's how it was. You just have this constant change where it's always evolving into something else, where it's being carved out further or carved out differently. And you can see how long it takes to carve particular areas just by the water that we have today that continues to carve. I mean, it's still happening. This isn't something that happened. It's something that's happening. And then the other thing that was interesting about the trip that I think related was you get to see at night the Milky Way, which is not something that you get to see anywhere that you live. So if you're out where there's not a lot of unnatural light, you get to see the Milky Way, which is one of the arms of our galaxy. And I remember when Hubble went up and we saw images from the Hubble, and they showed how you'd look at a patch of sky and there'd be all these stars, and then they would zoom in and you could see that those stars were actually galaxies. And that what looked like a star was a whole other galaxy full of stars, but it was just our distance that made it look like a single point of light. And so as I was looking at this, I had a friend that was there with me who said, so I said something like, think of all the different combinations when you consider that those points of lights are other galaxies. Like, think of all the combinations of matter and energy, and all the different combinations of gases and heat and distance and light and everything that's going on. And just the idea that it'd almost be a wonder if something didn't happen. If there was some sort of state or event that didn't occur, that would almost be hard to believe, that with all these opportunities for environments, that you wouldn't get something like life. And it makes me wonder, would we ever find life somewhere else, and why not? And they said, well, it depends on whether or not you think it all just happened by accident, which I think everyone has heard that before. And it reminded me of the weird, the irony of the idea that you have this concept that the entire universe is produced strictly for the production of human beings, that literally I am the point to the entire cosmos. But then you have this other side to the same religion where, I'm not worthy of anything. That if anything, I'm, the only thing I deserve is hell. And so there's this split where, okay, so the entire universe was produced to make people, but then the only thing people are really made for is hell. That you're deserving of hell, that's what you deserve, and yet you are the point to the cosmos. So you have this odd sort of choice where, as a Christian, you can kind of look at it either way. You get the option to look at it like, oh, it's so wonderful and uplifting that, God loves me so much and made all of this just to make me.
Yeah, I mean, a billion galaxies,
right.
a billion.
Right,
yeah.
right. And then you have this other side where when you need it, you can turn that faucet on to the other, to cold and say, oh, we're not worthy of anything. We're just dirt. We're like, ants to humans, and it's just, we're below the worms. And it's sort of this cake and eat it too thing, where you always have this idea that it's this way, but it's also this way. I'm the pinnacle of everything. I'm the lowest thing ever. And then I was thinking before I had left about the doctrine of salvation and the idea of salvation. And I know that there's like a lot of talk about the immorality of the doctrine of hell, the idea of, I've heard you say it before, infinite punishment for finite crimes. That's not the only problem with it, but what I began to think is that to me the problem isn't so much, the problem with the doctrine, hell is sort of like a symptomatic problem of salvation. And salvation is, to me, more of the root problem than hell. Hell is is simply an offshoot of that. And the issue that I have with salvation is you have these religions that you can pretty well see how they form just by going out. One of the things we saw in the canyon was a thunderstorm, and it was just amazing to see this thunder and lightning. Well, hear the thunder and see the lightning. The thunder would just roll for 18, 20 seconds, like out in the canyon. The lightning bolts were humongous over these mesas, and you had just a big open sky with these just insane lightning and thunder. When we went up on top of one of the mesas, we were in a vehicle, and I was just like, I have to see this lightning. So we went out, we watched the lightning, and
Did you take an umbrella?
I was in a car. We were in a car. We were just standing up there. I brought my golf clubs. We were taking. But the idea is, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, I absolutely can understand somebody saying, I have no idea what this is, and then telling their kid, that's Zeus is up there hurling thunderbolts, and I'm looking at Orion's belt, up in the sky, on nights when it wasn't cloudy, and I'm saying, there's Orion, and he's running, and you've got the different constellations and the stories that go with those constellations. And you have this whole idea of the mythology where you've got this layer of gods, and then you've got the layer of the half-gods, and then you've got the humans, and there's some humans that excel and the gods favor them, and then you've got like some humans that, get too prideful and they go and steal fire and get punished for that. Or it seems like one of the few things you could do wrong as a human being in Greek mythology was to presume to godhood. So you would go up there, and fire was something that the gods had. You go to get fire, and you get caught, so you get in trouble because you weren't supposed to take fire. That was supposed to be for the gods. But still, people get to keep it. Like we still get fire from it. And or you say that you're like a beautiful woman, and men are admiring you, and then one day you make a boast that you're as beautiful as Venus, and boy, then the roof comes down because nobody says they're as beautiful as Venus. So you have this thing where, there's the gods and then there's people, and there is that divide in the mythology. But even the gods had foils, just like human foils. So you've got these human gods that run around, and they succumb to human frailties and human faults. They can be injured. They can become jealous. They can become like attracted to people, desire things. They have all the same drives in these Greek myths that you see in human beings. They're just like...
Oh, don't call them myths. It's not fair to call them myths. There are people out there for whom this is a sincere belief, or so I'm told.
That's what I was. You told me that. But anyway.
And you guys can stop emailing me, you Zeus lovers.
So you have this, and there's an understanding to it. They're basically that upper layer where it's saying people are doing all these things I don't understand.
Mhm.
So I don't know what makes the lightning. Somebody's fashioning it. So you've got the guy who's like, hammering out the lightning bolts for Zeus, and Zeus is hurling them down. And Apollo's dragging the sun across the sky, and all the things that seem to happen for reasons that no one can understand get the argument from ignorance, and then it gets applied to the gods.
Right.
And in essence, if you go to war and you're victorious, and good, and you're a real fighter, you go to Hades and you get to go to whatever part of it is good for the warriors and the victorious. If you led a good life, you might get to the Elysian fields. You may just wander around, aimlessly as one of the shadows in Hades. It's partly dependent on whether or not you excel in life or just died and led a normal life. But you had these ancient concepts, that predate the Christian model of punishment and reward, like a system of punishment and reward, where you get something a little bit better if you were a little bit more excellent in your life, or you get something a little bit worse if you did something a little bit worse in life. You might get tied to a rock with poison snake venom dripping on you, for stealing fire. So you definitely have these eternal punishments. You can push a rock up a hill that keeps coming back down, and that could be your eternity. So you have that, and then you have, like, for example, in Egypt, you've got the idea that after you die, they weigh your heart, and if you were a good person in life, then okay, you get to go on, you have a happy life in the afterlife. If your heart doesn't, it's like too heavy or whatever, then something not so good happens. So the system of reward and punishment is no mystery because people utilize that. Animals utilize that. Social animals have systems of rewards and punishments. An individual screws up, the individual is punished or somehow corrected. The individual does well, and they're rewarded for that. You might get better, move up the hierarchy or whatever. But there's always this connection. Like when you have karma, you've got the idea of reincarnation and the idea that you're going to pay for the things you've done that were harmful in your past. You harmed people. You did things that were wrong. So in your next life, you're going to get another chance, and you can make it better. You can kind of work off some of this karma by doing good and not doing so much bad, and you just keep doing that. And coming back is sort of the penalty, the way of working off the things that you did that weren't good. And then when you finally get it all worked off, you don't have to come back anymore, and that's the reward. So you've always got the reward and punishment but it's a judgment on you and your life and things that you did that were socially acceptable, socially unacceptable. So you do this, you're punished for it. You don't do this, that's good. Or you do something good and you get a reward for it. And you have in the Old Testament, you've got the Hebrew idea that you pay in this life. So a bad thing happens to you, that's because you must have done something to piss off God. Or if a good thing happens to you, well, that's, God is smiling on you. And you have the one exception, which is the book of Job, which deviates quite a bit from the main ideology of no, there's not a system of rewards and punishments that is outlined in any of the Old Testament books.
Well, there is, but we can set it aside and just mess with you, just to be messing with you, is kind of the way Job does it.
Right, but I'm saying that in they don't have like an afterlife system of punishment and reward. They had a here and now system of punishment and reward, which was people just assumed if something good was happening to you, God was smiling on you. If something bad happens to you, God is not smiling on you. Or God is angry with you, or you need to go figure out what you did wrong, because that's why something bad is happening to you. And even that attitude is reflected in Job, even though the central message of Job, like you said, it's more about the bad things happen because they're screwing with you. But the idea that it was common for the Hebrews to believe that if things were going well for you, you did good. And if things were going badly for you, it's because God was angry. And all of Job's friends reflect that attitude. So then you have, though, a system that comes up that starts to imply that it's not really about what you do or don't do in your life anymore. It's more about just the idea that you're inherently going to have problems and that everybody's going to require this salvation, that you fell from grace, that there was a fall, And then from that point forward, you are unacceptable. And your children's children are unacceptable, and your children's children's, and there's nothing you can do to become acceptable anymore. You cannot accomplish anything through your own merits that will ever make you an acceptable human being worthy of reward. It's just mercy. God is either going to be merciful to you or he's not, because if you get what you deserve, if you get justice, you're getting punishment, or you're not getting the reward. And one of the things I noticed was that there's two things. There's a doctrine of original sin, and some Christians accept this and some Christians don't. And then you have also the doctrine of hell, and some Christians accept this and some Christians don't.
Right.
But whether you accept original sin or not, and whether you accept hell or not, you still think people need salvation.
Although for the people for the Christians who might reject original sin and reject hell, what they mean by salvation is maybe something entirely different. That people need to be saved from their own base natures, and that in fact,
That's exactly
in their life, they can be better.
I think they can strive, but they will never. There is never going to be that striving is almost futile, because the striving is just symbolic. You'll never merit salvation. You get it due to mercy.
Well, I would say that of the people who reject perhaps original sin and hell, that they would also reject salvation in any sense related to like an afterlife. That they would, when you get to that point where you've taken whatever's in this book and said, well, obviously this bit's a little silly, and whoa, nobody lived in a fish for 3 days, and wait, this doesn't make sense. And then they respin this into this modern theology of, okay, well, this is mostly metaphor, and it's about how you should live your life. They adopt basically a more Jewish perspective. The modern kind of liberal, non-literal Christians have adopted a more Jewish perspective, where this is a guidebook about how you should live your life, and some of them would probably even reject the idea that there's some heaven that you're going to get. So I don't know if that applies to what you're saying, because now they've rejected salvation too.
The few Christians I've spoken to that would reject original sin and hell, and I understand what you're saying, that if somebody says this is wholly metaphorical, if they're like on a Joseph Campbell vein, where they say this is just a metaphor, like along the lines of any other mythology, that's not quite where I'm getting to. Where I'm talking about would be the person who says that there is no hell, is simply separation from God. And so I do strive to be with God. I do believe that I will be with God, and that after death I am an immortal being, and that I will be with God. This is the person that says my base nature, whether it's original sin or not, is what separates me from joining with God ultimately. And what they've created is a doctrine that says it's wrong to be a human being.
Yeah.
And it's fine to be a dog and to do all the same things that you would get in trouble for being human, as far as like the religious doctrine. Like you can do any other animal can do these things, but a human being cannot do these things.
Which, oddly enough, even though I haven't read my entire Gift of the Matchless Gift, I did read the first couple pages. And from the first couple pages, they're talking about something similar. The purpose of the Hare Krishna movement is to bring man back to his original consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, clear consciousness, because the consciousness that we experience now is material consciousness, which is equivalent to insanity. When a man is haunted by ghosts, he can speak only nonsense. Similarly, anyone who is under the influence of material nature should be considered haunted, and whatever he speaks should be considered nonsense. Wow. I mean, that's all of us. Don't get me, I'm not going to go ahead and start ripping into this now, but what they're talking about there is a very similar idea, that there is something inherently wrong with us, who we are, our nature, and yet, boy, there's a huge logical fallacy right there, in that the person saying this is also affected by material nature, and so if I'm not supposed to trust anything that's said by somebody infected with material nature, then clearly I can't trust what he just said, which was to not trust him.
I'm going to guess that somewhere down the line they're going to claim some sort of cleansing or enlightenment.
Yes, that this individual has it has gone beyond, yes, overcome it. I'm expecting that as well. But it's the same type of there's something wrong with us, and here's a way to fix it.
Well, it made me start thinking about the analogy of, God as a loving father. And I use that a lot, God as a loving father. And I thought, and you can interrupt because
I'm me,
this is
and that's what I do.
And I'm just asking. But, so you have a father, he's a loving father, and he has, let's say he's got like a lot of kids, he's got 10 kids, let's just say. And so the first few that come out, they just don't do what he said.
I'm going to trade mics with Tracie.
Is it not working?
I don't know. So take mine.
Okay. It might just be the shirt I'm wearing. Like maybe because I can't get it up on my collar.
We'll just sit really close together, and I'll lean over and talk. Hi.
Okay. Is this one working?
Yeah.
Oh wait. That gave me another. Well, I can hear myself though. Is
Yeah,
this...
but you've got my old one.
Okay.
Welcome to live TV. I need a little slack here. All right, so I'm putting this one on, which is a new one. Anyway, loving father, 10 kids. First one comes along.
And there's like rules. Like after we eat, you clean up the dishes.
Right.
And so the first, the oldest daughter forgets to clear the table. She doesn't feel like it. She goes off. She watches television. She goes to bed. She forgets to clear the dishes. So the next day he kills her.
Good.
And
useless, worthless, ingrate.
And so
I brought you into this world. I can take you out.
So he tells the second oldest, from now on, you clear the dishes. And the second oldest is like, all right, I'm clearing the dishes. So they clear the dishes. And later he says, you mow the lawn as well. So they're mowing the lawn. They're clearing the dishes. And then one day they forget. And he says, I'm going to make a deal with you. You and me are going to have a pact where I'm not going to kill you. You're going to be my special son. And what I'm going to do is I want you to go out and kill the family dog. And the family dog's death will appease my anger at you not mowing the lawn and clearing the table tonight. So the kid goes and kills the family dog and brings the dead dog to his dad. And he says, okay, fine, then it's cool that you didn't. But now don't forget to mow the lawn and clear the dishes. We're going to get a new dog. So they get a new dog. And everything's going good. He has some more children. The next couple kids come out. Some of them don't do their chores like they're supposed to. They don't follow the rules. Like they don't clean their plate, whatever. And so they have to go out and kill the family dog or the goldfish or something. They're like, killing all the pets off because it's the only way that Dad will not kill us. So, like we deserve because we didn't clear the table. And so finally, it reaches a point where they're out of room in the backyard. And the dad is like, I got nowhere to bury these pets anymore. This isn't working. This temporary killing all the animals is not working. And it's, it's like, yeah, it's nice to get the dead animals, but it's not doing it for me. And I want something more permanent than this. So like one of the younger kids comes along and the father, he does something wrong. And the father says, I don't want you to go kill a dog. It's just not working for me. Instead, I want you to go across the street and get your playmate Timmy. And I want you to beat him to death with a tire iron. Because Timmy isn't my child and he's not subject to my rules in this house.
And perhaps he's the one who's been putting those naughty ideas in your head about not doing the
No, the idea would be that Timmy, because he is not subject to these rules, is not held accountable. So he has no infraction against the father. So he's pretty much not done anything wrong. He can't because he lives next door. So you have to go and beat your friend to death with a tire iron. Your friend has done nothing wrong, and that will make me happy, and then I won't kill you. But you need to come and tell me how sorry you are every time you don't do this. And let me remind you that you're just completely unacceptable. You're unacceptable, and you deserve to be beaten to death with that tire iron forever. But I'm going to waive that if you just go kill him. And to me, this is really strange that you can get a large group of people to adopt this and to say, not only do I adopt it, do I agree that I deserve to be beaten with a tire iron and killed, but I also agree to the bargain where it was right to go and kill somebody else instead of me. And to say that all human beings deserve this. All human beings deserve this for being human beings, for no other reason. And I was watching, one of my favorite shows to just like laugh, when I just want to blow off and laugh, is Funny Home Videos. And one of the funniest videos to me are either the animals or the kids. And what makes them funny is because they don't even know how funny they are. It's just like they don't get it. So there was one I remember where a person had a screen door where the screen had come out. And the dog was standing outside, and they would shut the screen door, and they'd call the dog, and the dog wouldn't come in because the screen door was shut. So the dog is thinking, I can't come through the screen door, even though it's not there anymore. Like there's no screen in it, you know, but the dog was so trained, but it's a reasoning error. The dog thinks, I can't get through the door, but you know, he could. But it's funny. This mistake is funny. The dog has not learned that he can go through the door, and it's funny because he's making an error. And it's a funny reasoning error. And every now and then you get one where there's like a little kid and he's covered in chocolate fudge and cookies and it's just crumbs all over him. And the mom comes in with the video camera and she goes, "Did you eat the cookies?" And the kid says,
No.
You didn't eat those cookies that I told you not to eat? No. Okay, yeah, and you've got to laugh. I mean, you've got to laugh. The kid is sitting there lying to you, but he's lying because of a reasoning error. He doesn't understand he's covered in crumbs and fudge, and that you can easily see that this is, you know exactly what happened. He doesn't understand. And it reminded me of a friend of mine that I was closer to a while back that was deaf. And she was explaining how when she was much younger, when she was small, she didn't understand her mother could hear her. So she would do things in the house thinking she was sneaky. And her mother would hear her, and then she'd get caught. And it took her a while to understand how she could get caught because she didn't know everyone else could hear and she can't hear. It's, until she got older, she didn't get that. And there's one where like the little kid is following his mother around, like throwing himself down, having tantrums. And every time she goes into another room, he gets up and he like runs to the next room, sees it, makes sure she's looking. Then he starts screaming, throws himself to the floor. And he follows her around like half a dozen times, just making sure she, because what's the use of your tantrum if mom can't hear it? And these are reasoning errors. These are things everyone has to learn. Animals have to learn. Children have to learn. You teach a dog, you paper train them, go to the bathroom outside, don't chew up my shoes, don't tear up the couch. And with children, it's the same way. You have to teach them. It's like, no, you don't have to lie. You tell the truth. I would never beat a kid for that. And I certainly wouldn't think that they should be punished harshly forever, or that they should be somehow separated from me forever, and that I shouldn't be able to tolerate them simply because they weren't honest with me about the cookie jar. I can't imagine how somebody could say that they were loving and then say that, well, that child lied, and that is wholly unacceptable, and they deserve separation from God for that. And if I believed in a God, I don't think I could believe in a God that would have that attitude.
And I think it would apply even, obviously somebody's going to object that we're talking about, kids below the age of reason and understanding and stuff, but I think it would apply to almost anybody. It's just that we're all human, we're all prone to mistakes, we're all going to do something.
Yeah, knuckleheaded. It's just knuckleheaded.
I've done plenty of things that I won't be talking about on the show that were dumber than the "no, I didn't eat the cookies" thing as an adult, and have seen other people do it too. And I don't think that this makes anybody, first of all, to this idea of whether or not it makes somebody stupid. This came up in an email conversation because I have, talked about ideas and being moronic, and on occasion, rattled off, to some caller, "Oh, you're a moron," etc. And for clarification, in much the same way that I talked about earlier, where I think that smart people, can be stupid about things. If I say that an idea is stupid, or that you're stupid for having an idea, I'm not assessing your entire character, that you're some completely useless idiot. You're stupid on the issue that we're discussing. And in some cases, I'm stupid on an issue that we're discussing. I'm doing something dumb. I've made a horrible mistake. The difference is that I'd kind of like to be, corrected as much as possible. Because while it's fun to laugh at the guy who does something stupid, it's also, it's more fun to laugh when it's something that perhaps you learned about before you made that stupid mistake. Whew, boy, that could have been me. So I'm going to laugh twice as hard at him. I mean, it's in the nature of what we do. But in none of it would I think that this individual, by virtue of making a mistake.
Well, it's really learning.
Yeah.
I mean, they're learning. It's like saying it's a crime to learn.
Well, it is. Reason is a whore. But yeah, this idea that your very nature, your inquisitiveness, your you're being prone to mistakes. This process of learning somehow makes you
unacceptable.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
that's it.
in the worst possible way. I mean, it's one
Yeah.
thing. There are plenty of people out there who, by and large, I'd say, they're pretty unacceptable. Clearly we have people who commit all sorts of atrocities, who are not very nice people. We have people who are stupid and moronic almost all the time about almost everything, guys, like, I don't know, Hannity, since I'm making fun of him today. But I don't think that Hannity, by virtue of his stupidity, or pick anybody else, I don't care, it doesn't matter, and I don't think that Hannity is necessarily a stupid person. He's probably a very bright person who happens to believe some really stupid things and say some stupid things, but I don't think he deserves to be beaten for it. I might laugh if somebody, no, I wouldn't. I mean, you have to beat him with like a loaf of bread or something soft.
I certainly don't think that we should go out and murder somebody else.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, it's like, let's go kill someone else to atone for this. I mean, atone for what? For being a human being.
Yeah.
That's really it. I mean, I don't know how we became the species that could not be ourselves without being wrong. And I'm sorry that a doctrine like that can take hold and that so many people can try and drill it into their children's heads that this is the reality, that it's moral, that someone should have, that a blood human sacrifice had to be made to God in order to make you acceptable. Someone had to be beaten and slaughtered, and then this is the God we believe in. Then now he's cool with you.
Yeah, and what we haven't even got started on the absurdity of blood sacrifice. I mean, substitutional atonement is absurd enough on its own, and then when you add in that this particular type of substitutional atonement, it isn't one where she owes you $5, but I'm going to pay it off for her, or she got a speeding ticket and I'm going to do the jail time for her or whatever. It's one of she's who she is, so we're going to kill somebody or something
Right.
for it.
So we're going to take somebody.
The smell of blood just really, yummy. That's the way. I mean, it's I'm only kind of slightly exaggerating. It's right there in the Bible where the smell of the blood sacrifice was pleasing to the nostrils of God. Get some new nostrils, you sick bastard. That's just crazy.
Yeah, and I think I can understand how people would, especially in the times when we didn't understand the world to the degree that we do now, the idea of cause and effect and natural forces. But I can kind of understand how these people would take a religion and make it into something where it's very similar to what they had in reality. So I've got this society, we punish people for wrongdoing, we reward people for good things, and then after we die, the gods will do the same. If you're good, the gods are going to give you good things. If you're bad, the gods will do bad things to you. And it's just simply overlaying that same social reality onto like a mythological framework that represents your social reality. But how we got from being rewarded or punished based on the things you do in life, whether or not you are behaving as a good person or behaving as a bad person, doing good things or doing harmful things, how we got from that to you're going to be punished for being human, and the only way to get rewarded is to offer up a human sacrifice. And the reward isn't really for anything you did, it's just simply because you believed.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to callers in a minute, so if you want to go ahead and put the number up. I know we've got one caller waiting that I'm going to get to right away, but touching on this idea that the formation of religion is kind of an extension of who we are and how we interact, not being surprising at all. Given the number of times we have conversations on this show about morals, last week, we had a caller, and it's like, well, this whole idea of can you be moral without God, or don't you need some divine authority, or how do you derive your morals, or isn't that all arbitrary? All those discussions, anybody who's a parent, and I'm not, but I can at least empathize, it's rare that you'll find a parent with sufficient patience that they will always stop to explain things to their kid, no matter what. I think even the best parents, the most patient parents, are going to find a time when they are going to utter those words that all of us despise, and those words are, because I said so. We all know that this is a completely unacceptable answer. We've known it since we were kids, and they knew it when they were kids, and it's completely unacceptable. However, there are times when it's just kind of got to be that way in order for us to move on. I don't have time to sit here and argue to you about why you need to put your shoes on. We're going to be late. Do it because I said so, type of thing. But we have extended that to this idea of morals, and I have this image in my head of some tribal chief sitting around, and he's saying we're not doing this and we're not doing that, and this is the punishment for this and this is the punishment for that, and there's some annoying little hunter-gatherer guy who's like, well, why? And he keeps trying to explain over why. Because I said so. And if you don't listen to me, I'm going to kill you. I mean, I could see that happening. And that's how you get the kind of morality by fiat.
Well, plus you had kings, and the rulers had a little bit more power.
Yeah. Because I'm king.
And if you think about it, a lot of the gods were kings. You even have king references in the Bible.
Yeah. First king, second.
Well,
just having fun.
King of kings.
So, if the phones are working, I think we have Gregory in Eugene, Oregon.
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, I can hear you a little bit.
Hey, first of all, Tracie, I wanted to say that was a really good sermon, for lack of a better term. I don't know what you call that, lecture, speaking your thoughts.
Okay.
Very, very well done. And since Matt was kind enough yesterweek to listen to me explain some of my thoughts and ideas and a little bit of my belief, I thought I'd return the favor, and I'd like to ask you guys about what you believe.
About what?
Yeah, it depends about what.
Okay, my first question is, as atheists, I know most atheists don't believe in an afterlife, but I'm wondering if you believe that the existence of an afterlife is dependent on the existence of a God.
No, I wouldn't be. Now, that's the only reason I say that is because Buddhists believe in reincarnation, for example, but they don't believe in a God. So I know that it's possible for a person to accept belief in an afterlife and not accept belief in a God.
Yeah, on that front, I'm with Tracie. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in an afterlife, but I don't believe that the concept of an afterlife is necessarily dependent on a God, although in most religions it would be.
Okay, and I understand you guys believe in evolution. So my next question is, do you believe that evolution is done with humanity?
Well, let me just clarify that I hope when you say you guys, you mean me and Matt specifically, because atheism is not tied to evolution.
Well, when I say you guys, I mean atheists in general. I get the impression that the two of you believe in evolution, although I could be wrong.
Well, I would say that Matt and I do accept evolution.
Because it's a fact.
But at the same time, I have to say that it's not, there's nothing about atheism that requires a person to accept evolution.
Yeah, if you were talking about, it's even wrong, I think, to say atheism in general as just a phrase, because it isn't an ism. The only reason the label exists is it's a response to an ism. It is a position on a claim, and outside of not accepting the claim a God exists or some God exists, there is no other unifying atheist position. I mean, it's a single point. Everything else is something else. Now, I will say that by and large, the people that you're going to run into who identify themselves as atheists in organizations like this or speaking out, by and large, you're talking about skeptical, rational thinkers who are atheists for those reasons. And so, yeah, you're going to run into pretty much people who don't have a view on an afterlife, or do not accept claims about an afterlife, and accept scientific evidence and the theories that explain that evidence, like evolution. Now, I don't understand your question.
Do you two specifically, Matt and Tracy, do you guys believe in biological evolution?
I do, yes.
Sure.
And as far as your question about whether or not it applies to human beings, I think that's what you're asking. And I would say yes, things like residual organs and nipples on males, yeah, I think I can't deny that there appears to be changes happening.
Okay, another question I'm curious about, do you guys believe in the concept of moral objectivity, or is morality a continuing human invention that we make up and continue to refine?
I personally think it depends on what the person means when they say objective. I've heard definitions of objective in the conversations about morality that I would be willing to accept, but it wouldn't necessarily be objective to the degree that I tend to think of objective. So that has to be defined up front, what the person means by objective. And usually the ones that I'll accept have to do with the idea that would there be a morality that would be most specific to human society and best suited to human societies. And there's different, I think, things to account for, such as like the size of a society or the demographics of a society. There are so many factors that could occur within any social setting that for me it would be very difficult to think that it would be possible to come up with like a universally accepted objective morality, although I know there are people that sort of work toward that goal, and they do think that it's a more realistic goal than perhaps I would imagine.
Dennis and I had a conversation about this because this idea of moral relativism or subjective morality is one that comes up over and over again. And to answer your question as it was asked, I think the second one is a more accurate representation of my view on it. And what I would say is I'm in agreement with Tracie, or in agreement with something Tracie referenced, that, and I've mentioned this before, for any given situation, there are a number of possible actions. Some of them are going to be better or worse depending on what you value. But by and large, we can at least agree on the simple ones, that this action is better than this one. Now, if that's the case, then in this spectrum, and the fact that there would likely be a limited number of potential actions, there must be some action or set of actions that represent the best possible actions given the values, the precepts that you're beginning with. And that is what I would identify as the objective moral best. But that's objective only in the sense that it comes after we've set up the particular values, which I think are personal and subjective. I am the author of my morality. It happens that because we're humans with great similarities and similar goals, that we're going to have a lot of things in agreement, right. A lot of values in agreement.
Well, plus society is going to tolerate only to a certain extent. So, for example, a person's selfish motivations will be tolerated to an extent, and they might be able to enforce that with actual force to a certain extent, but there is a time where society simply steps up and says, this is not going to be tolerated. And so to that degree, you've almost got a check and a balance in that I've got my own desires, but then I also have to consider the social context, because if I don't, society will check that for me.
Yeah. Although I would point out that society could still be wrong and would be wrong in some cases where I'm going to disagree with them. But unfortunately, we live in a cooperative society, and sometimes compromises have to be made. Does that come anywhere near answering your question?
It not only comes near, it goes past the finish line and runs the bonus lap.
Cool.
So,
I'll stop talking now.
This is for the Atheist community of Austin. Do you guys have any special events planned to celebrate the big non-event of December 21st of 2012?
No, other than I've promised myself that I won't stop doing this show until after that date. Unless I'm kicked off, or we lose the show, or something other. Assuming everything continues as normal, I'm going to do this show at least that long, so that I can sit here and laugh my ass off the weekend after December 20, whatever it is, 22nd, 23rd, 2012.
21,
I don't know.
Right? 1, 2, 2, 1.
I
don't know. 1, 2.
I am disappointed that all this nonsense over 2012 is probably going to ruin John Cusack's career, but
I
it's
don't
his
think
choice.
it'll run it. It'll just stand as a bad mark for bad acting roles. And Nick Cage keeps getting work despite bad acting roles like Knowing.
Well, Nick Cage is right now selling off his castles, so I think his bad roles might be paying off. But anyway.
Okay, then that's something to consider. But yeah, I'm looking forward to 2013, 2014, just chuckling and saying, hey, the world's still here. And it's still going to be here in 2037 when it
Guess
doesn't
unless
end
it's
in
not.
2036.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for calling.
Yeah, thanks for your time. And just on a technical note, I've been experiencing this weird echo chamber effect, listening to sort of double overlap when you guys are talking.
On the phone
But hopefully your audio techs can get that figured out.
We're lucky we have sound at all. But thanks.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tracie.
Thank you.
Yeah, for those who don't know, who tuned in late or who watched some abridged version of the show on the internet, which I think is likely, we had all kinds of problems today with audio. It's been amusing and kind of fun as people crawl around on the floor and hand us mics and we swap mics. Give us a couple more weeks and we'll have everything, I don't know,
Ironed out.
smoother? Maybe not smooth, but
Smoothierist.
smoothier. Anyway, we've got, if I only got 2 lines, is the third line not working? Anyway, I've got James in Rome, New York.
Yep, hello.
How you doing, James?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm
Hey,
not
Tracie.
bad.
Hey.
All right. I've got a verse here from the Bible. It's Ezekiel 10:20. And it says, each of them had 4 faces, 4 wings, and what looked like a human hand under each wing. Their faces looked exactly like the faces I had seen nearby the Cheber River or something to that effect. Whatever, however you pronounce it. But I was wondering if you have read that verse and if you think that he's describing what Christians believe is angels, because that just sounds absolutely ridiculous. And it doesn't say in that verse, but there was a different verse somewhere that I'm not sure what it was, but it said that the faces were that of a lion and a sheep and a person. It was just strange.
I don't think that's what a Christian would think of as an angel. The Christian references to angels, when you go back into the Old Testament and you read stories where they talk about angels being involved, are usually described just as men. And I mean they are, divine men. They're like men from, sent as emissaries from God. I don't mean that they're just regular people, but the way they're described is usually men in really expensive looking or bright colored clothing. So I don't know what these things would be, but they probably wouldn't be an angel. And I think somewhere in the New Testament there's a story about, I want to say it was Peter went to prison or something, and he when he gets released, he goes back to his friends, and they are afraid to open the door because they think he's still locked up, and they assume it's Peter's angel.
Yeah.
And so I'm really of the opinion that most of the time angels were just thought of as looking a lot like people.
Yeah, it's just completely crazy. I mean, it's absurd enough to think of angels, but then saying they have 4 wings and 4 faces, that of humans and animals. I just thought that was odd, and I just thought I'd get your take on that, but thank you.
Who knows what grows in the desert that they may have consumed?
Yeah, I agree. It's odd. This is one of the things where you're talking about books written thousands of years ago, and then translated from languages which are now in some cases dead, not in this particular passage, but certainly language has changed over that time, and it tends to reflect the period that it's in, and we can't always be very good about figuring that out. But in this case, you've got something, and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this guy just describing a dream? In which case I'd say, okay, he had a really weird dream. What's the big deal? Why are you attaching significance to this guy's really weird dream? Is it because it was so weird that it must have been significant? Because that's silly. And if it wasn't a dream, if it was a hallucination or vision, whatever,
Right.
okay, same answer. And if instead he's using some kind of poetry to describe something, well, all right, that's
Yeah.
interesting, but
Well,
it's useless.
animal-human hybrid creatures are not unheard of outside of the Bible. I mean, you have like the Minotaur, and you have like all of the Egyptian gods, and I mean, so there's something to be said for humans with animal heads. I don't know why that is, or even I guess you have centaurs. You've got like people tops and animal
Right.
bottoms. I mean, I don't know why. Well, I guess that's just.
In this case, I mean,
imaginative.
I guess one of the more traditional views on it is that he's describing creatures that are there to represent the glory of God or what. But my concern is, okay, how did you come up with that? Okay, I understand, that we're not, it's fairly plain on the face. I'm talking about this and this and this, and this is what they look like. But, my question is, do people really believe that these creatures exist like this, or is this a poetic description?
Right.
And what we find happening is people dig through this book, particularly Ezekiel, Daniel, Revelation, etc., in these crazy-sounding passages, and they find things that say what they'd like them to say. They read their own preferences into this.
Well,
Now,
I think to some degree, the more abstract, the better.
yes.
The more it lends itself to interpretation.
I'm sure that somewhere online you can find something that generates text in the same sort of, cryptic biblical style of, let me generate a new revelation, the revelation of, Mogwai.
Yeah, that really upsets me because I think it should either be you take the whole book literally or you take none of it literally. I don't think if you believe some of what's in it that you should not believe the rest, it just makes no sense.
Well,
I do think they believe, for example, that Ezekiel had a vision. I mean, I think that most literalist Christians would accept, I don't know that they would accept necessarily that these creatures were real, but they would probably accept that God endowed Ezekiel with a vision.
there are also, and I want to be clear that by and large I agree that if you're going to accept a portion of the book, you should accept it at face value unless there's clear demonstration that somebody's speaking in hyperbole or poetic or whatever. But I don't necessarily agree that one is obligated to take the whole book, certainly not literally, but unless, and this is where Christians in particular find themselves in a problem. Your view is this entire book is Scripture, breathed by God, that is necessarily true. And as soon as you've begun with that presupposition, now all of a sudden everything in here is of equally valuable, equally true. If you don't start with that, you can say something about, oh, well, here in John, they're talking about this happening, and it's completely mundane. After this, Jesus and his disciples went out in the Judean countryside where he spent some time with them and baptized. Wow, okay, I have no problem at all believing something like that occurred. And John was baptizing near Salem because there was plenty of water and because people were constantly coming to be baptized. I got no problem believing that at all. Now, when you start talking about walking on water, all right, now we've entered a different realm.
Right.
And I don't know how, I used to do it, and I don't know how people end up reconciling that.
All right, well, thank you. I just wanted to get your take on that, and I'm sure you guys have more callers, so thanks again.
Okay, thanks. Actually, we don't have
Just
more
got
callers.
lucky. It looks like somebody
but-
just
oh,
came on.
I think we only have 2 lines. I'm going to try something. No, we actually have 3. But oddly enough, only 2 of them seem to have been lighting up, and they.
I would
light up
like
in
to add
sequence.
that you point out something important, which is that in mythologies, there are cues
Yeah.
that these are myths. And the cue that this thing is a myth is when you hit a point where it conflicts with reality. And that's when that's when your brain is supposed to click in, and it says, this is a story. This is a story. And what's interesting is that you can hand, for the most part, a Christian anybody else's mythology and they get that.
Yes.
They'll read it and they'll say, but that's just, I mean, look, that's just
Yeah.
wild. That's just made up. Muhammad didn't ride to Mecca on a beast flying through the air. I mean, that's, obviously that's a made up story. And Buddha didn't battle demons under the Bodhi tree. And, they understand when they're reading mythology as much as anybody else that when they get to the point where the story starts to talk about some crazy event, that, okay, we're dealing with a myth here. But when it's your own, and it's not specific to Christians. I don't mean to imply that it is.
Right.
It's basically anybody that accepts any mythology literally. Usually they reject other mythologies for reasons that they should reject their own.
Yeah, and I've said a number of times that if you wanted to really do good research into a particular religion to find the objections, you don't necessarily have to go to a biblical scholar or a Quranic scholar or whatever. All you need to do is go look at what Muslims have to say about Christianity and what Christians have to say about Jews,
Right.
and what Jews have to say about Muslims, and what they all have to say about Mormons, and what Catholics have to say about Protestants, and et cetera. They've already done all the work for you.
Yeah, they're their own worst critics.
Yeah, the non-theistic individuals don't have any work that really needs to be done other than collating the data.
Yeah, because I can guarantee you, just about any doctrine you can find, you will find a counter doctrine
Yeah.
that is just as readily believed and supported.
And actually, within Christianity, it's even easier because you don't have to go outside of Christianity. You're talking
Right.
about thousands of denominations, and there is not a single point of doctrine that is not
Disputed. Yeah.
disputed, where somebody has rejected it, right down to the existence of Jesus as a human, or whether he was half human,
Right.
half God, or all human, all God, or all human, or all God, or figurative. I mean, every single possible element of that is adhered to by somebody. And rejected by
Yeah.
somebody else.
And the fundamentalists will provide you verses for any one of those beliefs you want to.
Oh yeah, you want to have fun sometime?
Any one of those doctrines.
Go on to one of the
counter-doctrines.
sites where they prefer the authorized version, the 1611 King James version, and quote something from the NIV, just for kicks. See what happens. It's absolutely a blast. I got Brandon in Fresno. How you doing? Ooh,
Yeah, I'm good. This is Brandon.
we've got like a theremin sound of echo. But go ahead.
Yeah, I can hear an echo over here too, but I wanted to call and talk about a caller that called last week. He
Yeah.
was, trying to say that he was willing to believe that there is a God and that there is not God.
Yeah.
And you guys did a pretty good job of ripping into him, but I think that there's probably a lot of people out there who would say the same thing about their belief.
Yeah.
A lot of fence sitters or a lot of people that just haven't analyzed it enough.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the point that those people need to hear is that believing means that they accept the claim.
Right.
I think that they get confused thinking that believing is that they don't reject the claim.
Yeah.
that mean?
There's been quite a bit of discussion about this. Russell listened to the show and posted on the blog, and he took issue with my position, at least in part, and I did a defense of it, and that I don't think really affects what you're saying. But my take isn't that somebody can't believe two contradictory things. Of course they can. We know people who do it all the time. My position is that in order for somebody to believe two contradictory things, there needs to be some layer of obfuscation. There needs to be something that hides and disguises the contradiction. For somebody to say, I believe A and I believe B and I believe A and B are contradictory, that is the one and only situation where I'm saying that either that person is crazy, lying, or somehow deceiving themselves.
Confused, yes,
They
somehow
have
confused.
engaged in some confusion that obfuscates it for them.
Yeah.
And I think in the case of the caller from last week, when he said, I think the rough quote was that I can see myself as equally theist and atheist. I think that
Right.
if I'd have pointed out that it would have been okay for him to say, well, actually it wouldn't have because of the way he phrased it, but theist and anti-theist, where you're talking about two alternate propositions and that you do not accept either of them, that would make sense. But in the way he phrased it, he would have been in the position of accepting both of them,
Right.
which is still a contradiction. So, I mean, he was like fractally wrong in the phrasing, but I think what he actually meant was that he is in this fence-sitting position on the question of does a God exist or does a God not exist? And as Tracie has pointed out numerous times, this phrase that we've heard, which is "I neither believe nor disbelieve," makes me, well, it made me pull all my hair out.
Observe.
Because the second you say "I neither believe," you're done. You've already said you disbelieve by definition.
Right.
What you haven't done is address whether or not you believe
The opposite.
the contrary claim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't want to reject the theistic claims out of fear or for societal reasons.
Yeah.
And they don't want to say that they reject the claim, so they say they believe them, but that's two different things.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who will profess belief, and by the way, I have no problem with that. When people say, they write and say, well, should I come out as an atheist? You're the only one who can make up your mind. Yeah, I
Right.
prefer as many outspoken, out and about atheists as possible, but not everybody's life is the same. And if you think that being out as a non-believer is going to make your life miserable, perhaps cost you your job or put your life or health at risk, or
cost
make
you
your
your
family
family,
life untenable to the point where you're now isolated and alone, then I have no problem with you not being out. And by the way, I have no problem with you not being out just because you don't want to. I mean, you do whatever you want. I'm looking for people who are comfortable with this and who have a good understanding, who are going to make good arguments or the best arguments and not necessarily bad ones. Do what you want as long as you're not, well, I sound like a Satanist there, as long as you're not hurting anybody. This discomfort that people have with being different, some people embrace that difference. I didn't used to be one of those people. I mean, it's not like, I've got a couple of tattoos, but it's not like I tatted myself up and pierced myself all over and ran around with green hair and, screw the world. That kind of, I'm going to be obviously different from everybody. But there's something to be said about embracing who you are. And if somebody's not out as an atheist for good reasons or bad reasons, it doesn't change who they are, what they believe. If, however, you are in the course of your hiding your beliefs, you are taking actions that are in opposition to your beliefs, actions that you think are not only wrong but harmful, then I'd encourage you to stop doing that. I don't know, I got kind of preachy on you, and this wasn't even your issue.
No, I agree with everything that you're saying, and
That's because I'm right.
I'll get back onto your topic if you have other callers calling in for.
Great.
I just wanted to say that it's a lot easier. People will be a lot happier if they're honest with themselves.
Yeah.
And say, I don't believe that, or I neither reject or accept those claims.
It is interesting because we get a lot of letters from
Thanks, Brandon.
young people that.
Thank you.
That's all right. From young people that they want to out themselves.
Yeah.
And they ask, how should I do this? And they'll give us a little bit of information about their family, and they'll say, my mom is really religious, my dad not so much so, but my brother moved out, and he said something about not believing, and mom got really upset, and I, feel like I want to come out, but I'm living at home. And one of the things I always ask them is that I'm like, first thing you need to ask yourself is, why do you want to come out? Like, what is it that you obviously want to for a reason. There's something that you're hoping is going to change with being able to come out, even if it's just, I want to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not being judgmental about it, but I always ask them to consider, what is it that you hope is going to change from being out as opposed to not being out? And number two, realistically, that thing that you hope will change, is it realistically going to change? So this is what you want to happen. Is that probably what's going to happen, or is it probably not? Because it's not going to be helpful to do something for a specific reason, like I want my mom to accept me as an atheist, but then in reality, she probably won't. So are you just going to make yourself miserable for the next 2 years while you live at home and your mom is really unhappy with you because you want her to accept you, but in reality, there's not a reason to think she will.
Yeah, and I've recommended all kinds of courses of actions to different people, as options. The idea that I'm going to come out as an atheist doesn't necessarily need to be mom, dad, I'm an atheist. One thing is just to be yourself And you might be surprised how long it takes before the religion conversation gets around to, do you actually believe in a God? Then you can just honestly say, no. I think the idea is kind of absurd or whatever. We're almost out of time because we only got a couple minutes left, but I got Kyle in Australia.
Hello.
Are you there?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Well, yeah, good morning to you. What time is it?
Over here it's about 9:30.
Oh, okay. Well, you didn't have to get up too early. So what was your call about?
So I just called in to just offer an idea of what might be considered as proper proof that God would exist. I'm not sure whether there's any biblical passages or anything that people could use to refute the idea straight away, but if God was to give me the same powers that he has, I'd believe it straight away.
Fair enough.
So is there anything that could be poked holes in if I was to use that in argument at all?
Give it a try.
I can't think of anything other than the Christian response or the theistic response, and primarily Christian, is going to be that, well, if that's the kind of evidence you're waiting for, then you have, unrealistic expectations, and that's never going to happen. My response has changed over the years to the point where now I'd say, if there is a God, then clearly that God knows exactly what it would take to convince me, and that's it. If that's the case, then he knows she, whatever, knows exactly what it would take to convince me. And the second that happens, I'll obviously be convinced.
One of the things I tend to say is that there's like a billion things that I could probably just name right off the bat that I accept exist. That it takes hardly anything to convince me something exists. Like this pen, it take nothing to get me to acknowledge this exists. It's not hard at all. I mean, this room is full of things that I acknowledge exist. And so convincing me that things exist is a very simple task. There's nothing hard about it, but yet I don't see any evidence of an existent God.
And unfortunately, we are completely out of time, which means I get to go play and have fun at Threadgills. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person who can come. You can't. Sorry, Kyle, you're in Australia. But any of the rest of you who want to come down and join us, you're welcome to. We'll see you down there for drinks and discussion and whatnot. We'll see you also next week. Thanks. That's it. Make sloppy fans as the show's going off.